Good evening, Whaalawhalahiatu, and welcome to tonight's bulletin of BCN News. Leading the news tonight, an emergency at the Nuafall Hospital on Tuesday warranted a medical evacuation to New Zealand yesterday morning. The patient needing urgent medical care is Common Role Member of Parliament Richard Hipa. Here's more. At 10 minutes to 10 a.m. yesterday morning, the New Zealand Air Force Hercules arrived to transport Mr. Hipa to New Zealand. Families and friends had gathered at the hospital in the previous evening and yesterday at the airport to support the Hipa family. He was accompanied by his wife Hannah and their youngest daughter, Manu. In a half-hour turnaround, the Hercules departed at 20 minutes past 10. Questions were sent to the Premier yesterday as to why the last two medical evacuation flights were on the New Zealand Royal Air Force Hercules aircraft instead of the Air Ambulance New Zealand. Premier Dalton Tagilangi in a statement said that the issue is availability. New Zealand Air Ambulance services other countries in the region as well as within New Zealand. Unfortunately, there were no air ambulance available when Niue needed them during the last two emergencies. According to the Premier, utilising New Zealand's Air Force Hercules is always the last resort. An update from the Hipa family in New Zealand. The flight arrived just before 2 p.m. yesterday. Mr. Hipa went into cardiac arrest on arrival, but the swift actions of the medics on the flight were able to stabilize him and send him to emergency care at Auckland City Hospital, where he went into emergency surgery last night. The family was informed just before 11 p.m. last night of the successful operation. His son, Aldrich Hipa, told BCN News that they are very grateful for the successful operation and that his father is in a stable condition. The family extend their gratitude to families and friends for your prayers, love and support during this time. And we wish Honourable Mr. Richard Hipa a speedy recovery. In our other news, the Parliamentary Committee hearing into the operations of BCN held over the past 2 days ended yesterday. The committee, chaired by the member from Tamakotonga, Riki Muyakimakani, held their hearings at the Golf and Sports Club. On day one, the committee heard from the chairperson of the BCN board, Ida Talangi Hikesi, and General Manager Trevor Siakia. One of the interesting questions from the committee was from the Deputy Chair, John Opo Siakia, asking if BCN can record church services and broadcast live on Sundays for people who won't make it to church. However, Reverend Nuka Tauevihi, who is also a director on the BCN board, says that the church will not agree to have church services broadcast on Sundays because they want people to attend church and not stay home to watch TV. Aside from the media team, there were no one else present on day one, but there was a much better turnout on day two yesterday. There were 7 public submissions from various organisations and some government departments. Maru Talangi spoke on behalf of the national sports body NISCA, saying that there is a need for more sports coverage. Langa Lavini asked for more equality in the use of the religious denominations on the island to open the radio morning sessions instead of just using the members of the National Council of Churches. Mora Enetama, the director from Taonga Niue, spoke about the use of the wangahau and to look into reviewing notices to ensure the correct use of the wangahau. She also spoke on the work her department is assisting with the BCN archives materials. Catherine Papani represented the Niue Chamber of Commerce and asked for business packages for promotional as well as for more local content.
In light of NCOC, I think for us, we'd like to get a clear understanding on pricing packages for businesses in relation to the ability to promote any sales or any events. And then going forward from that, more local content would probably be appreciated. I don't know the structure of the organisation in relation to the work, but if there is a program director per se to schedule programs or keep engaged in contact with the communities to look at the events. There's been sporting events in the past where we've had medalists, but there's been little or no actual coverage of those milestones for our country, and those events and achievements should be celebrated. There's a lead up now into the Commonwealth Games for a lot of the sports, especially with lawn bowls.
Emilo Foley from the Environment Department asked the committee that for more funding for the Department of Environment for their invasive species program. Natasha Tohovaka from the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, also from the village of Hakupu, spoke of the need for more local content and to perhaps look at using village correspondents to provide local content and use young people as well. Nicola Puheki represented the Education Department and asked for BCN to bring back some of the children's reading program that used to be aired before. The most heated discussion was on the work of journalists and news coverage, issues with news being not fair or balanced, and that the news on BCN is biased. The chair of the committee, Riki Muyaki-Makani, read out his concerns over the news about the working of the committee and the recent article on the hearing.
Would you say that the news you present is fair and balanced? Let's look at your news of this committee from our proceedings yesterday. Your headline was little probing and lack of public interest. Let's see if we can fix that. Now, taking into account that this is the first hearing of this kind for us, which means a steep learning curve, we will not accept that we need find our way first. My second point is this. Why did you choose to highlight the fact that not many people attended the proceedings yesterday, when you know full well that the outcome of this inquiry does not depend on how many people turn up to listen? You make your comments on radio that, in your view, only ministers can refer a topic to a select committee for investigation. An ordinary member, like the chair of this committee, can't do that. That view circulated like wildfire in our small community. The result was that the Speaker's office published information to say that this view, which you promoted, was wrong. The authority to establish this committee, or any committee of the Assembly for that matter, is contained in the standing orders. Now, if you say that you present a balanced news, did you not correct your earlier mistake?
I think that's where the angle is coming from, as a news writer. Something new. There's something new. Why isn't anyone here to listen to this very important occasion if it's the very first of its kind?
General Manager Trevor Siakia responded, saying that if the concerns over news content is so great that the committee wish for an investigation into the matter, then that is a process that can be undertaken to satisfy the committee's concerns over the news items on BCN. It is important to be reminded that BCN News is produced by a single reporter working on her own, covering news for radio, TV and writing articles for online content. There will be more on the outcome of the committee hearings in later bulletins of BCN News. The chairperson of the committee, Riki Muyaki-Makani, will be on News of the Week radio program tomorrow morning. A registered elector from the Alofi South electoral roll, Mrs. Carol Edwards, is appealing the decision of the Chief Electoral Officer, Darren Tohovaka, for declining her nomination form to be a candidate of the Alofi South Village Council. Carol Edwards told BCN News that she has written to the chairperson of the Public Service Commission, stating her disappointment. Mrs. Edwards says that she was informed by the Chief Electoral Officer that her application was declined because she is physically not in Niue. The decision is based on the interpretation of residency under Section 2 of the New Assembly Act of 1966. Carol Edwards says that as a person who lives in Niue and work in Niue, this is unacceptable. She says that if she is considered not a resident of Niue because she is temporarily abroad, and she is also not a resident of New Zealand, does that mean that she belongs to no country? BCN News understands that Mrs. Edwards is in Auckland on medical reasons and is expected back to the island soon. Carol Edwards is the principal of Niue Primary School and a permanent employee of the Public Service. The Public Service Commission confirmed yesterday that they were contacted by Mrs. Edwards about the decision of the Chief Electoral Officer to decline her nomination. The statement from the Office of the Public Service Commission says that the matter is not yet a Niue Public Service matter. According to the Public Service Commission, there is a process to be followed under the Assembly Act by all parties, including the Commission. The integrity of the electoral process depends on all parties following that process. Further to that, the Commission says that the Chief Electoral Officer and other election officials for the Village Council elections 2021 were appointed by the Commission on the 29th of July, and they have the full confidence of the Niue Public Service Commission to perform the functions and processes outlined in the Niue Assembly Act. In a press release last Friday, the Education Department announced the new changes which will apply to the NCEA achievement standards, and they will come into effect next year. Here's more on that story. The new NCEA Level 1 will come into effect in 2023, and NCEA Level 2 will be piloted. The new NCEA Level 2 will take effect in 2024, while NCEA Level 3 is piloted. NCEA Level 3 will start in 2025, signaling the complete change of the NCEA qualification. Each level of NCEA will reduce in size from an 80 credit qualification to a 60 credit qualification for all three levels. New standards relating to literacy and numeracy will become a mandatory part of levels 1, 2 and 3 of the qualifications for students. The 20 credits achieved from these standards are separate from the 60 credits needed to achieve each level of NCEA. Learners may achieve their literacy and numeracy from years 9 or 10, or it may be in year 11 or beyond. Literacy and numeracy standards must be achieved before they complete year 13. According to the press release from the Education Department, Niue High School is working to transition to these changes while continuing with normal school program. The teachers will continue with professional learning development opportunities at the school in order to implement these changes, which will begin next year. For more information, you may visit the ncea.education.govt.nz website. And still with Niue High School, BCN News understands that several students of the high school were suspended this week for vaping. This is not the first time the school students have been caught vaping. Questions are asked as to how these students are able to get their vapes and also the oils and who is supplying them. BCN sources said that they were informed by one of the suspended students' relatives that their nephew was one of the students suspended for vaping in the school bus. There was no response from Niue High School to BCN News email seeking confirmation of the incident. This issue of students vaping while waiting for the school bus has been raised before by members of the public. In February this year, the Principal Charles Ioane asked for community cooperation to promote good habits in students after incidents of students vaping were reported to the school. At the time, the Health Department officials from Public Health and the Director of Health, Eddie Akawala, shared their concerns for the health of these young people. It is unclear how these students are able to get access to vaping oils and who is supplying them. Unlike alcohol prohibitions, where young people under 18 are prohibited from buying alcohol, when it comes to smoking, there is no prohibition, so young people can buy and smoke or vape. And the village of Toi, joined by their families and friends, welcomed their new pastor, Reverend Holo Tawhea, last Friday. BCN News camera was there to capture some of the events of the day. Congratulations to the village of Toi and their new Ekalesia Niue pastor, Reverend Holo Tawhea, and his lovely wife, Fama. The day started with the formal part of the program and the church service. The leaders of the Ekalesia Niue, led by the president, Reverend Nuka Tauevihi, were joined by the families and friends of the new pastor. The village of Toi has one of the smallest church congregations on the island, but size has never deterred the people of Toi from making sure that they have their own dedicated pastor. Reverend Holo and Mrs. Fama Tawhea were previously at the Makefu Ekalesia Church. And congratulations to Reverend Holo Tawhea and your lovely wife, Fama. To end the news tonight, the village of Lakepa was abuzz last Saturday with activities as the people went along to join the village of Lakepa for their annual show day. The day was well attended, including the Premier and his cabinet ministers, the diplomatic representatives from Australia and New Zealand, and other dignitaries. Premier Honourable Dalton Tangilangi officially opened the day. Here are some of the highlights from the Lakapa Annual Village Show Day. And wonderful show day for Lakapa. The next village show day is for the village of Tamakautonga. But before we leave you tonight, remember that the Game 2 of the Bledisloe Cup will be on TV Niue tomorrow at 8 o'clock, Channel 4. But from us here at the BCN News team, you have a lovely weekend, and we'll join you again on Tuesday next week for our bulletin in Wangahau. Until then, Morine po, good night.